I gotta tell you, as a general rule, I am not a huge fan of horror remakes. I'm not a huge fan of Hollywood remakes in general. I think it's especially now. It seems to be accelerating. It's almost all that they do. And more often than not, I roll my eyes because I think we all know it's basically cashing in on old IP and a very, very lazy way to do it. But that does not mean there aren't some fantastic remakes out there when you think about how many have been made, and that includes the horror genre. So we are going to get into 10 fantastic horror remakes. Some people don't even realize are remakes that you absolutely must watch as a horror fan if you haven't done so yet. And if you have, they are well worth watching again. Let's get into it. In at number 10, Wes Craven's remake of Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes in 2006. This is the movie that has me paying attention when I'm on a lonely stretch of highway as to how far and where the next gas station is. I'm just saying. Now, the story follows a family. They're traveling across the desert. They find themselves stranded, unfortunately, in a remote area. They have no way to call for help. Now, what should have been a normal road trip turns into a fight for survival against an enemy they definitely did not see coming. And that is what makes this movie so terrifying. It is not about people making obviously bad decisions, as you know, I'm sure you've seen those horror movies, right? It's about ordinary people. They're having an ordinary day, at least to start, and it suddenly becomes an unimaginable nightmare. There's no police coming to save them. There's no quick escape. There's no easy way out. They're completely isolated. The desert seemed so beautiful at first, and then it became this massive prison that they can't get away from. And one thing that I really appreciated about The Hills Have Eyes is they make these characters feel like they're fighting for their lives, right? Not just running through this horror movie checklist. The family dynamic is really well done. It gives this movie an emotional weight to it. You're not just watching people trying to survive; you're watching them fight to protect each other, which sometimes is lacking in a horror movie. And of course, look, man, this is one that is not for everyone. It's extremely dark. It pushes boundaries for sure of what a lot of viewers might be comfortable watching. There are all different types of horror out there, and not everyone likes all different types of horror. They might have their specific thing. But if you're a horror fan, okay, and you're looking for a really well done remake that understands the assignment and it delivers genuine tension, this is one of the best examples you are going to get. Brings us to number 9. One of those movies I said a lot of people don't even realize is a remake, and that is 1986 '86's The Fly, one of David Cronenberg's best films. It follows a brilliant scientist who's working on a groundbreaking experiment involving teleportation. After an unexpected accident, he begins experiencing some terrifying and disturbing transformational things that change not only his body, but of course his life. And this, for me, is where The Fly separates itself from a lot of other body horror, especially more recent body horror. Yeah, the practical effects are absolutely incredible. Some of the imagery is still shocking to this day, but the real horror isn't just what is happening physically, it is watching someone lose complete control of themselves, slowly lose complete control of themselves. David Cronenberg's always been fascinated by the relationship between the body and the mind. The Fly might be his most perfect example of that. This transformation to disgust, or I shouldn't say too well, too disgusting, yeah, and frightening as well. But it also is disgusting and frightening, and it's sometimes difficult to watch. I gotta say, a lot of people might not be able to watch this one, and it's also tragic as you've gotten to know this scientist who's working on this experiment and his relationships and all of that. And so you're not just horrified by what is happening, but you feel a lot of sympathy for the person to which it is happening, right? And what makes The Fly an absolute masterpiece, it's not really about becoming a monster. It's more about fears like aging and illness and losing control and watching something you can't stop completely take over your life. If you have not seen 1986's The Fly, you absolutely must. Some movies are simply, sadly, victims of timing. I think House of Wax in 2005 was one of those. Didn't get a lot of great reviews. I think part of the reason was it was sort of the height of Paris Hilton being famous for being famous, and her being in their cast, I think took a lot away from that movie. Unfortunately, I think it's getting more of a following now, more of a cult following. You couldn't talk about it without talking about Paris Hilton at the time. But if you look past that celebrity casting, House of Wax is actually a surprisingly effective horror movie with some really good performances, and it deserves more credit than it's been gotten. Obviously, we follow a group of young friends. They're on a road trip. They find themselves stranded. Seems like an abandoned town, kind of creepy in and of itself. What starts as a simple detour becomes a terrifying fight for survival as they uncover some creepy and disturbing stuff about this town. And that is one of the biggest strengths for me at House of Wax is the atmosphere of the movie, right? If the town feels completely isolated, there is nothing else around. It almost seems frozen in time, which I guess makes sense considering it is House of Wax. There's this creepy sense of like being trapped somewhere. You really were never supposed to find, right? It's sort of something that is out of time. The Wax Museum itself, fantastic setting, definitely nightmare fuel. But this is not just a slasher, you know. It becomes, as I mentioned, more of a survival horror story. The characters aren't simply waiting around to be killed. They're trying to escape. They're trying to outsmart their attackers. They're trying to stay alive in an environment where every corner feels dangerous. And look, I think one of the things I really liked about this is I think this was Alicia Cuthbert sort of coming out of her shell of being known for 24. I think she's a major reason the movie works. I think she gave a great performance in this. I think she showed a lot of leading lady potential. Did that necessarily work out for her? Unfortunately, no, but I think she showed it. I think she brought a lot of determination, a lot of intelligence to this role, an emotional weight to this role that definitely makes it a movie, despite how it was received when it came out, a movie worth watching. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. How exactly do you remake that movie? It changed horror forever. And I mean, you had people walking out of the theater. It was that shocking, and you were going to remake that movie, and that attitude is exactly why I almost completely missed this movie forever before I finally got around to watching it, because I thought there was no way, especially at a time when we were getting a lot of horror remakes, and the idea of remaking this just seems so absolutely absurd to me. But I am glad that I watched it. Instead of simply copying the original, we got a little bit of an expanded world, but I love the way it was shot. It's still unsettling, it's still grimy, right? It still keeps that feeling of like being trapped in this nightmare where this normal road trip. Ever hear that one before? Can we stop going through remote areas, people? It seems to cause nothing but problems, right? And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of this movie is the atmosphere of it all, right? It's got this dirty, like I said, grimy. It's oppressive, is what it is, which I felt you got a lot in the original as well. Everything feels hot. It feels uncomfortable. To be fair, Jessica Biel kind of relieves that a little bit because, breakout role for her. I'm just saying, I think typical t-shirt and jeans is was changed forever. Anyway, I'm getting distracted, but seriously, this is it was a breakout role for her. I thought she did a fantastic job. But also, I think the biggest thing, what I really appreciated is that this remake understood the assignment, man. It didn't try and reinvent the Texas Chainsaw Massacre into something completely different. It wasn't just a shot for shot remake. It did that very difficult balancing act of honoring the original while bringing something new to the story that gives the remake a reason to exist and a reason to expose this movie and this classic to an entirely new generation of horror fans. Never was it going to replace the 74 original. I don't think that can ever happen. It's just simply one of those movies, you know? But as a remake, far, far better than I expected it to be. Coming in at number 6, another one that you say, "How do you remake this?" And that is Friday the 13th. I mean, let's face it, that is a huge, huge challenge. One of the most iconic horror movie franchises of all time. Jason Voorhees, one of the most iconic, most recognizable horror villains of all time. I mean, there is a lot of history and a lot of expectations attached to Friday the 13th. But what I think this movie did really, really well is they understood what fans wanted, right? It doesn't completely reinvent Jason or turn him into something unrecognizable. It takes that mythology, it respects the character, it delivers a modern Friday the 13th experience, not modern in the derogatory way it is used now. And I think one of the smartest decisions that they made is putting Jason front and center, right? And yeah, look, let's face it, horror movies. This is not a spoiler alert. Horror movies, y'all, horror aficionados should all know this. Jason wasn't actually the killer in the original 1980 film, as you know, Drew Barrymore's character in Scream famously got wrong. Jason wasn't even in the first Friday the 13th, but this movie knows exactly why audiences are here and they want Jason Voorhees. And they get one of the, to me, one of the best, most intimidating versions of him that we have ever seen. I think maybe let me rephrase that. I would say the best, most intimidating version that we have ever seen. This Jason, he is not a slow-moving figure who simply walks after his victims. He's fast, he's brutal, he's intelligent, he's genuinely scary. He feels less like a supernatural force and more like a predator stalking his territory, stalking his prey, which I think makes him incredibly, incredibly effective. I think the movie needs to get more credit for the atmosphere of it all. It is not simply a collection of kills, right? There's a slow burn quality as the story builds, especially with the mystery surrounding a missing girl that her brother is going to look for. And that pulls that character into Jason's world, which adds a storyline it gives the movie a little more emotional weight than your typical slasher. But if you have not seen the original remake from 2009 of Friday the 13th, I highly recommend that you check it out. Coming in at number 5, Evil Dead from 2013. It is a horror, obviously the original a horror classic. It launched the franchise. It created a devoted fan base. It gave us one of the most recognizable horror characters ever in Ash Williams, the final boy. Do we call him the final boy? So when you announce you're remaking Evil Dead, you're not just remaking any old horror movie. You are stepping into a world that fans are extremely protective of. It is a dangerous world to step into. But I think they did everything right in terms of what they changed and what they kept. They completely flipped the story from a bunch of friends, going and hanging out for the weekend to friends and family getting together at a cabin in the woods as a place to help a friend detox. So it brings a whole different element to the dynamics in the relationships, right? There will be scabs that may be easily reopened, shall we say. There's going to be, and of course, you have a brother and a sister as well. There's going to be a lot of emotional depth and emotional baggage in the relationships, especially when that detoxing character is going through that detox. There's a lot of opportunity for things that come up. So the horror, in a way, feels a little more personal because of that. And the other major difference I always thought was the tone, right? We know that the original Evil Dead has a very strange blend of horror, dark comedy, over the top energy, maybe a little bit of humor as well. And the remake says, I don't think there's a place for us to top that or to simply redo it. So we're going to go in the opposite direction. It's a lot more brutal, a lot more intense. It is completely committed to making you, the audience, uncomfortable. There's no winking at you. There's no ha ha, right? It wants you to feel every minute of horror. The practical effects, absolutely fantastic and done in an age of CGI. I thought Jane Levy was fantastic as Mia. She brought a lot of emotional weight to the role. So if you have not seen the remake because you thought, man, they can't remake Evil Dead, I highly recommend that you check it out. Number 4 was huge in so many ways, and that is The Ring from 2002. Not simply a remake, it is a remake of of a Japanese film, and it introduced a huge portion of the American horror audience to J-horror and kicked off a wave of supernatural horror films influenced by Japanese cinema. By the way, I think it's not on here, spoiler alert, but you always got to leave something off. And I think The Grudge is another movie from J horror in that time period that I could have added to this as well. It is a story that follows a journalist investigating a mysterious videotape connected to a series of strange deaths. After watching the tape itself, she finds herself racing against time to uncover the truth of the curse. And we all know what the curse is. You watch the tape, and in 7 days, you are going to die. And what makes this work so well is it understands something many horror movies seem to forget, and that sometimes the things you don't see are much scarier than what you do. Hello, Jaws, although that was for very practical reasons we didn't get the shark in Jaws, right? Or the monster in Cloverfield. That started catching on. Um, Super 8, I think, was another one, right? Anyway, The Ring was a masterclass in the slow burn psychological horror. There's this atmosphere of this, it's kind of just constant unease. You know what I mean? A feeling that something's wrong, even when nothing is really happening. The movie doesn't rely on nonstop jump scares. It gets in your head, and that is where the disturbances come. And of course, you have to talk about one of the most iconic images in horror, and that is the girl crawling out of the television. It is so damn creepy. It is instantly memorable. I think a lot of people who never even saw the movie know that scene. But yeah, I mean, if you have not seen The Ring, I don't know how you can continue to let that happen. It is a must see for all horror fans. Number 3 on the list, despite being so high, I think is one of those that people might say, wait, what, really? This kind of surprises me. And that is The Crazies from 2010, starring Timothy Olyphant right in the middle of his incredible run on Justified. This was originally a George Romero film from 1973. It follows a sheriff trying to protect his family, his community, a small town after a mysterious outbreak begins to change the people around him in a different way initially than you usually get in a typical zombie movie. Maybe some people don't even classify this as a zombie movie because they aren't your typical zombies. The infected don't immediately become mindless monsters searching for brains. At first, they all act pretty ordinary. There might be something that seems a little bit off about them, but they don't seem like monsters. They do very much become unpredictable. They become violent. They eventually descend into complete and total madness. And watching that transformation unfold when other people around don't really understand what is happening, it is honestly, it is more disturbing than people who just instantly turn into mindless zombies overnight. And one of the things that I think makes the crazy stand out a little bit is the government role in this story as well. We got the outbreak spreading. The movie explores quarantine, military intervention, right? The impossible decisions that need to be made when an entire town becomes viewed as expendable. in order to protect the population around the town, right? It adds another layer of tension because the survivors aren't just trying to escape the infected. They're also caught in a situation that's spiraling completely out of control with the government, who, even for those that aren't infected, may not actually be trying to save them from the situation. I think Timothy Oliphant, who's a fantastic actor in my opinion, fantastic role as a job as well in this role as this level-headed sheriff, bringing he brings just the right amount of determination, humanity, and so forth. The crazies, it may not get mentioned as often as a lot of other horror remakes, but it is excellent in my opinion and well worth seeing if you haven't done so yet. Coming in at number two, Dawn of the Dead from 2004. This is not only my number two remake, but it is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It has a great cast. The pacing of the movie is fantastic. There are some genuinely memorable action and horror sequences in it as well. And once it gets going, it doesn't do a whole lot of letting up. There's a perfect balance, I feel, between the suspense. There are character moments as well. There's enough with these characters that you develop that emotional attachment. So if and when something happens to them, it hurts just a little bit more than, a lot of movies where they just have these dispensable characters that are going to get eliminated, shall we say. And here's a fun bit of trivia I like to talk about. Long before the DC drama going on between Zack Snyder supporters and James Gunn supporters, they combined to make this fantastic horror remake. Zack Snyder directed, James Gunn wrote the screenplay. So, man, whatever side of the superhero fence you are on right now, I'm just saying it's hard to argue that together they didn't create something absolutely special. I think this one of the great things it does is it absolutely respects Romaro's original, but it also kind of very well in a well done way confidently does its own thing. Doesn't replace the 78 classic. It's sort of something you can put alongside it, and again, as someone who's skeptical of remakes, this is one of my favorite zombie movies of all time, not just one of my favorite horror remakes of all time. So if you have not seen this one somehow or you haven't seen it in a while, I absolutely recommend you check this one out. Coming in at number one, John Carpenter's The Thing. I don't know if there will ever be a horror remake for me that would knock this off the perch at number one. In fact, it is so good and it's become such the definitive version of this that a lot of people, especially those maybe who weren't, are younger, weren't alive when it came out, don't even realize this is a remake because it is the version that everyone talks about. Now, we all know it follows a group of researchers, in an isolated Antarctic outpost, and they encounter an alien life form. And you could say all hell breaks loose from there. It's brilliant. It works well on so many different levels. It's part science fiction, it's part horror, it's part psychological whodunit thriller. And the real tension is doesn't really come from the creature. It comes from the growing paranoia of the people who are there once they realize what is happening and that this alien life form can take any of their forms, replicate and replace them. Who is who they say they are? Who is the alien life form? So, of course, you get that tension. There's no place for anyone to go. They're trapped here with this alien life form. And so, of course, they're going to start turning on each other in every conversation, every glance, every movement becomes, hmm, what's going on there? You start seeing the suspicion grow, the paranoia, and everything is a matter of life and death. And I love the Antarctic setting. I think that's one of the film's greatest strength, having them isolated out there, no place to go. A lot of horror movies, they may never get there, but there's some place to escape. Even in something like a remote cabin, there's a car. If you can get to it, if you can find the keys, if it runs, and then if you do get going in the car, can you get out, right? But at least there's a chance. But here, there's just a frozen wasteland. It is pure isolation. There is no escape. So, of course, you get an incredible sense of claustrophobia to go along with the growing paranoia. It is so, so well done. The atmosphere is such a huge part of it. It is a slow burn for sure. The practical effects are top notch. It is wild when people I know, believe it or not, or people I know people who see it for the first time and getting their reaction to the practical special effects is absolutely kind of wild. I mean, even after 40 years, man, they are still top notch. Um, I don't. It's crazy. The thing, the thing wasn't really fully appreciated when it was first released. It wasn't accepted very much. But time obviously has been incredibly, incredibly kind to this movie, and it is. I'm sorry, I lost my I couldn't find my damn little mouse thing. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it is fantastic. I don't know that I'll ever see anything that's going to take it out of the number one spot for me. But anyway, let me know where I screwed up in the comments below. What should be number one in your opinion? What isn't even on this list that you think not only should be there, but maybe should be in the top three or the top five or number one? Let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Truly appreciate y'all checking this out. I will talk to you